Geesh, and you are in the right place. If you've got 20 minutes and you want to learn some best practices and be inspired by some of the best marketers in the world. Today, I'm very excited to have on the show Patty Foley-Reid. Gosh, Patty and I go back like forever. And when I started the show, Get Real with Revenue Marketing last January, I thought, Patty was absolutely going to be one of the very first people to be on the show, and it just took us some time to get scheduled. But let me tell you about Patty, and then I'll tell you about our topic today because everybody is going to want to hear about this topic. So right now, Patty Foley-Reid is the Senior Program Director, Marketing Investments and Analytics at IBM. And I've watched Patty through her career and across various companies, and Patty has some secret sauce. And that is she knows how to set goals. She helps her team ensure focus on what matters. And she also is a constant inspiration to her team that creates high performance. So, Patty, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. I love this topic. I've got crazy passion on setting
I
goals.
I know you do. So let's just get right into it. And I think every leader struggles with to be able to focus on what matters. So how can a leader ensure everyone is focused on what matters, especially in a marketing department, right?
Yeah, I'll just start by saying, a leader isn't a leader because they're out in front. A leader is really a leader because people follow them. So,
Yeah.
when you think about jobs you've had, I mean, those leaders that are just out in front, they're really smart. But if you can't rally the group, then
Yep.
that's a sign of a real leader.
And I remember when I was in grad school, and when you're younger, you always think the leader's the one at the top and the one out in the front. And then I learned that you're not a leader if you don't have followers, right? And
Yeah.
so you're so right, Patty.
And that leader could be anyone. But here's a quick telltale sign if you're all aligned, especially from a marketing and sales perspective. Like I can tell in an organization when it's at the end of the quarter and sales is sweating it out. And at the end of the quarter inevitably ends up on holidays, right? And everybody wants to like
Mm-hmm.
take off. But if marketing isn't sweating it out, that last week of the quarter alongside sales, and marketing's checked out, that I mean that's a sign that says you're not aligned.
I
So
love that. That is so
yeah.
true. Having been both in sales and marketing, you're absolutely right. End of the quarter, always at the end of the year, over the Christmas break, you're right. If market is sweating it out, I think that's a great telltale sign.
Yeah, and the other thing is everybody's got to really like know the number. Like I'm surprised at how it gets so fragmented. It's like, what's my number? What's marketing numbers? What's the source number? What's the revenue number? What's the recurring revenue number? What's the SaaS number? So there's a lot of metrics out there, but everybody's got to be grounded in, the measure that matters. And inevitably it's growth around revenue. And yeah, and I like to describe it as a it's like a blood drive. Like, why don't we post the blood drive? Like, how much more blood do I need? How much more blood do we need? Or like where are we
I'm
at?
not
Like
sure
how
that's the
close.
best example. How much more blood do I need to give to the company? But I get where you're going with it, right?
Yeah, but like so it's like that visibility of a blood
Yeah.
drive where people
No,
can
it
see the
is.
gauge. And
It is.
it's also like it is the segmentation of it too that says, maybe our recurring revenue's all set and we need net new. So that like kind of the
Mm-hmm.
analogy is like, I need more O positive or B
Right. Right.
positive. So like everybody's got to like know the number, and I think it's important, especially from a revenue operations perspective, to make sure that the full team has clarity on that.
And I will tell you guys, I've known Patty a long time. She is a serial revenue marketer. And so whenever I hear her talk about that sales and marketing alignment and how it happens, it is so critical to an organization. And if I were to say that marketing today has their single biggest problem is being able to ally and partner with sales. If they could break through that, then all things are possible. So I completely agree with you on that one. Well, Patty, marketers work really hard. So, as a leader, how can you ask your team to work harder when they're already kind of feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, because it happens a lot. I remember I have a story behind this, and it's like I was working for the CEO of Fortune 500 companies, not at IBM, but we were doing some serious transformation at that time on the entire business, not just marketing. And we were getting ready to present to the senior leadership team. It's over 200 people, making sure they're all lined up. And, he said to me, he's like, Patty, I cannot ask these people to work any harder than they already are. And, I remember to this day, I just sat back and looked at him. I said, listen, you don't have to ask them to work harder. If you inspire them, they will work for you 24/7.
I love that. I love that. Well, how do you
It's so
inspire people? How do you do that?
it's that whole like you get the people to follow you. You make sure they understand the why behind the what. And I would say, the magic really happens when your manager, a business leader, are really able to connect your like personal goals with the business goals. And that's when, this magic really this really lights up, that you get the fire in your belly that's fueling the business as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that, and especially with the Gen Z and the younger generations that are coming into work. Studies show, and we all know from working with young professionals that they want to be associated with something that has meaning, something that matters. And you're exactly right. You're never going to have a better high performing team than when you're all engaged around a common vision and you all feel great about being part of that vision. So, completely agree with that.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about how will the team know they've arrived? I mean, you go in, you set goals, you have a vision, and it just feels like you just keep working and working and working. What does arriving look like?
Yeah. Having worked at many companies myself, both really small startups and, giant Fortune 500 companies, like, what it feels like when the business is suffering, like everybody's like feeling the pressure. You also know, when you're making progress and you get like energized by that. I mean, it's fascinating. Like when you're at a startup company, like everybody should feel that passion that comes through. Like
Hmm.
everybody's got skin in the game and like you can feel it. Like everybody's feeling the pain, everybody's feeling the progress. So you should be able to feel it. And I think it is the leadership's responsibility to make sure that everybody understands where they're at. And in addition to like connecting like personal goals with business goals, I think there's value in really articulating the dependencies between teams. Because, when I think about the work I do and what really motivates me, it's, I'm not going to let my team down. I'm not going to let my marketing leaders down. I'm not going to let the business down. So there's this connection with the teams around you. And I think if we were to better articulate the dependencies, it's like when I do this, you're going to do this. Or if I don't
Hmm.
do this, then I understand the impact that it has on downstream.
Yeah, Patty, you're so right. More and more, I'm seeing marketing um, really more than ever is working across so many different functions of the company. So it's not just dependencies within marketing, it's also dependencies across functions, right?
Yeah, and they get really granular.
Hmm.
The expectations of product marketing or product management and how that impacts the demand you're going to create or the quality of the demand you create and how that impacts, what a business development is able to work with and then, on into sales too. So
One of the things,
that's another key place
uh,
to get it
it
right.
is absolutely, and I think you need to be very direct about it. So one of the things that I often counsel people on is not only do you need to have an org structure, your formal org structure that supports your strategy, and you and I have talked about that many times, but you also need a collaborative network that is also mapped out, right?
Yeah.
Who does what, when, how, where, and why. right? So, because again, we're having to work collaboratively across teams, and that working relationship and understanding how those relationships work is important as having a direct line on an org chart.
Yeah.
I remember
It's
many years you told me the story about how you were, talking about organization. The sales organization in this company you worked for, they changed how they went about doing business, and you actually reorganized part of marketing to reflect that because you
yeah.
guys had to be in lockstep together.
Yeah, I think that was really around, account-based marketing and, in that situation, we really had the insight and the need to focus, but also had the courage to deselect. So that's where, the whole business was all in on hyper focus. It's ABM, it's basically it's targeting and it's hyper
Mhm.
focused targeting and knowing like who your high value customers are and the long-term value that brings to the business. So it's the
Yep,
alignment across the entire org and
it
everybody
is.
has
Yeah,
a part to play.
absolutely. So Patty, walk me through, let's say you're at a brand new company, right? And day one on your job. How would you approach goal setting?
Yeah, the way I approach it that works for me personally, I've used it with my teams for a long time and I've used it at many different organizations, is that I make sure that there's basically 5 goals. Everybody has a goal that's aligned to the business goal. So that's number one. Number two is everybody on the marketing team has the same goal. Everybody in marketing is driving towards the same marketing goal that fuels the business. Then the third goal is really like specific to your function. Let's say it's Rev Ops. So it's like, how does Rev Ops map to the marketing goal that maps to the business goal? And then the next 2 goals are really more individual specific. One is specifically, how are you going to change the game? I call this like a game changer. And I have people write that into their goals. It's like you're going to have a personal impact this. Like let's write it up. You're going to put it on your resume as like this was your personal driver. And then the fifth one is around your own professional development to make sure that you're constantly learning.
I love this. It is so simple. So there's the goal of the business, like let's say it's 35% growth and take over Europe, whatever. And then marketing has a goal, and everybody in the marketing has that goal, but it ties to the business goal, right?
Exactly.
And then you have a function goal, like you were saying, like RevOps, for example, and they also have a goal, but it ties to that same marketing goal, which ties to that business goal. Then you've got 2 individual goals. One is this is what you're going to put on your resume for your impact, and the other is professional development. Patty, I love that. Have you written a blog about that? Have you written a white paper about that or anything? Because that is so insightful.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, maybe I should. But I've definitely written, it's how I write my own goals and
Mm-hmm.
map them back and then break them down into, if that's the goal, how do you break it down into, let's say it's a professional development. Am I
Yeah,
doing mentoring? Am I doing something external? Because then you get really detailed in your goals to say, let's say it is professional development. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to get some professional development. It's like, well, what am I going to do? Like, I'm going
mm-hmm.
to find a mentor. I'm going to do some external learning. I'm going to, whatever it might be, a stretch project.
So how do you keep these in scope? So for example, is it one business goal? Is it 2 business goals? Is it 3 business goals?
It's usually the one main goal. And so I
Okay,
have the way I set it up is like you have a main goal and then you have key performance indicators. And like I keep it isolated to this is the one goal, but then there's these key performance indicators that say when the key KPIs are on track, then presumably your goal's on track.
I got it.
But to keep that clarity, yeah,
So and is it same all the way through that you have one main goal and then you have KPIs? So on the marketing where it's the same, it'll be one main goal and then there are KPIs with that.
exactly.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, so for marketing, it's typically like marketing sourced revenue. Like you're trying to increase that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, that breaks out to, how are we going to do that? And then, for example, inevitably it's around, let's say, yield. In order for us to increase our source revenue, we have to increase the yield. And then there's typically a volume goal associated to that as well.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And do you have this in a dashboard? Do you review this in every meeting? I mean, how do you keep this front and center for folks?
Yeah, some places it's more rigorous than others. But one thing I've recently done, just in the spirit of like agile marketing and everything, is put a Trello board against it for my own team. And that way, um, it's transparent. And we also put the weekly rigor around it. So we'll discuss it in one-on-ones and then also in team meetings as well.
I love that. When I talk to you, Patty, it's just like, well, duh, of course you would do this. Why don't more leaders do this?
Yeah, I wish I could answer that, but
Is this a
um,
bless your heart moment? Is that like bless your heart because you just can't get out of your own way?
I don't know because it's so important. Like, HR will put so much emphasis on it, and I'll come into a new organization or look at goals. I'll be like, why are they so light and fluffy? Um, and I think the business, we put so much energy into the business goals, but like tying it through to the personal
Um,
goals is really the managers and the leaders'
mhm.
responsibility. So I think that's the missed opportunity is like everybody's like all in on the business goals and the marketing
Yep.
goals, but then they miss the part where, you really get the passion when you tie that to the personal goals. And that's
Yeah.
really up to the individual to do that and their manager. And it's, I think, a leadership,
I
you
love
know,
that. There should be as much rigor all the way down the chain as there is at the top.
exactly.
When you have a team that's working under those kinds of goals, what does it do for the employees? What does it do for the marketers?
It creates passion. Like everybody, there's this whole notion of like flow, like you're in the flow. And I mentioned that at earlier
Hmm.
that, it's up to the leader to inspire. So it's when you feel that passion, it's like clarity. Like when I'm making sure that I manage my calendar. My calendar doesn't manage me, and that's lined up to my goals. But like I have this passion and I have clarity on the work that I'm doing. So I think that's the value is that it's creating this passion and this energy. And in the example that I explained, I was like, you know, I'm in the middle of the night, like ripping through Excel spreadsheets on different tabs, like, waking up with like great ideas. So that's when I personally know, like I'm in that sweet spot when you're in that flow.
I know exactly
And
what you're talking about.
yeah, I think
Absolutely.
everybody does. Like they know
Yes,
like when they're
yes.
working on a project. So that's the feeling we were talking about. Like you got to get people to have that feeling, and that's when you get the motivation and the passion, and you get
So,
everybody working
Patty,
together.
before the pandemic, was your team all on site or were you part virtual or what was your situation prior to the pandemic?
Yeah, we were global, so we had people
Okay,
all around the world. So we were in the office, but remote in a weird
right.
way.
But I would also think that having this passion and clarity around this goal structure is really helpful, especially in a virtual environment where you just don't get those constant touches from people.
Yeah. And it's, connecting the teams and connecting the individual to the goals too. And it like we
Okay.
talked about that, those handoffs between teams. Like, I mean, I'm like I said, I'm not gonna let the other team down. So or I'm not gonna let
Yeah.
my team down. And that
Yeah.
drives energy for me. I'm
Yeah.
not so much about the business. It's about like I'm not gonna let others around me down.
So, what advice would you have for someone who maybe is in a new leadership position? What advice would you have for them around goal setting and goal alignment?
I think
Besides,
it
besides just do it, right? Of course.
Yeah, I think it's really two things. One is making sure you connect business goals to personal goals because that's where you get that passion and that drive. And the other thing is don't underestimate the need to inspire. I think, this happens a lot. Let's say in marketing, like you have a new strategy and you have new levers and you roll that out, but then you never go back to it. Like you got to sell everybody on the strategy and make sure that they understand it. And that's where and you have to inspire people to understand what's in it for the business, what's in it for them. So I would say those are the two really key things is connecting business to personal goals and then making sure that you inspire.
I
And
love
like I
that.
said, You're not a leader because you're out in front. You're a leader because people are following you.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Well, Patty, I could talk to you forever. And, you know, you're just always so, I mean, you just have such experience and such depth. So thank you for taking the time to share with everybody. I really appreciate your input and your thoughts. And if you want to do a blog on this goal setting and how you do it, I'd be happy to host it on our site because I think it's something that everybody could use.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I appreciate the opportunity to share my ideas with you and like happy to help anybody in any way I can.
Okay. Well, listen, Patty, thank you. That is the end of our show today. I hope you guys learned something from Patty. I know I did. I want to go, I want to get her to write this blog like right now so I can share it with everybody. So anyway, I hope you all have a great day. Thanks for joining us on Get Real with Revenue Marketing. And remember, it is a great day to be a revenue marketer. We will see you next time.